Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to episode, I'm going to say 10 of the AV Experience, where we talk about things that we think are important, and you can choose to believe that with us or not. So today, our conversation and topic is about industry certifications and credentials, and are they worth anything? But before we do that, Jonathan, good to have you back. People aren't going to be upset with me yelling into the microphone, evidently. People were upset that I was a little too engaged last week. So having you back, I think, puts the bumper rails up for me, and I get reeled in sometimes. But did you have any excursions where you almost died? Were there any trips, any almost fires, any mountain escapades? Nothing?
No, nothing like that.
Oh,
It's been a real busy week, but nothing exciting worth sharing so much. I had a guest over. You did too. His
I
name was
did.
Tim.
Yep.
Yours was Wednesday night. Mine was Thursday night. A great guy. Really enjoyed it.
Okay. I had Tim over too, and they really enjoyed it. It was a good time. I enjoyed Tim's company. He told me about his theater. I had met him at Audio Advice previously, and it was enjoyable. I really liked having him over. Babyface, yeah, it was worse. You know, sometimes when you got a really big beard and then you screw up when you're shaving it, and you're like, oh no. Oh no. That is the end. So I cut it all down, and I walk out, and my 5-year-old daughter looks at me and goes, "What?" Like, that was her reaction.
What did you do?
What did you do? So this is day 2. It grows pretty quick, so it'll come back in without too much of a problem. And honestly, sometimes it gets pretty annoying. Like, I was walking down the stairs and just thought, I can feel the air on my face, which was, you go so long without being able to feel it, and then it's a milestone or remarkable when you can actually feel it. So,
Have you ever grown a beard long enough that like it gets past the annoying stage? Because like this distance is okay. Like it doesn't bother you. It gets much longer than that. It starts getting like itchy and annoying. I've never made it past that. They say,
yeah, you get past it, then
Yeah.
it starts getting in your mouth. And then you've got like you're eating tacos with sour cream and it's like all over your beard, or ice cream and it's like up here because you can't do anything about it because it's just there.
Yeah.
And then you try and lick it off and you're just licking hair, and it's just, there's benefits to it. There's not benefits to it. My wife does not like having me like this. She likes me with a beard. Maybe it hides my ugliness. I don't know. I don't know. But that was my big change this week. Oh, I got my lens back for the Griffin.
Yes, nice.
So it's unmodded. We measured. This new lens is brighter. And
As if you needed that.
30%, the lowest I can go is 300 nits.
Well, why is it brighter? Is it a different aspect?
It's just
like a
the
different
lens.
ratio?
No, it's just this. You know how you play hit or miss? There's a lottery a little bit. I mean, there is a little bit of a lottery. And it could have been that the other lens was a roadie, right? It got around. And I think it just had some issues. Full bright,
like 5 or 10% brightness, a couple percent. How much? difference we're
I don't
talking about?
know.
Like subjectively noticeable.
It
just in your
feels
room?
subjectively. I didn't measure the other one, but I measured this one. Guess what full bright is?
I don't know. 100%,
100%.
400, 500 nits.
1,000.
No, come on. Are you serious?
1,000 nits.
Wow.
It is. We turned it on. Bob was over when we turned it on, and we had what's the animated movie with Don't Talk About Bruno? Encanto.
Yes.
It was amazing. Like, it wasn't too bright. It was incredible having it up. It was. He compared it to being better than any TV he had ever seen.
That's wild, man.
So it was pretty cool. So
1,000 nits on a
nits.
projector. I don't think I've even heard of that before.
1,000 nits.
Dolby Cinema shoots for 106 nits.
1,000.
You're 10 times the local premium theater.
So I think MW's on the right track. The projector at 1,000 is just lit my beard on fire, and that's really where it went. We
Burn it down to the
couldn't
stubble.
get it back. So 1,000 nits. I got the amp back. So I'm back up and operational on full Atmos now. The dropout gremlins reoccurred. I think I got them nixed. It was just some setting stuff. I made the mistake of plugging in a T-Mobile router.
Yes.
Like, so I'm like, oh, I'm going to use this as backup. And I just plugged it in, not thinking about it. And my network did not like that very much. So that T-Mobile router kicked off the other router and became the router. And I'm looking at it today like, why do I have a .12 IP address? This is not right. And I'm wondering why I can't get to any of my wired devices. And it's because it had changed the access point IP addresses. And it caused mayhem. So I don't know if something happened and when I restarted something and it wasn't happy initially, but it's, I think, happy now. I watched Samsara and it didn't drop out, so that was good. So that was nice. And then there was a new beta update that I did testing for Storm that fixed some stuff that I'm happy about. They fixed some stuff with Apple and some other things. And then the negative part, there's always a negative. I can't have all positives. Everything can't be a win for me. So I told you that one of the amps blew up, right? I said that. Well, I requested, because I am a moron, I requested the wrong amp. So the amp that I got is the infrasonic amp, and it will behave the same way, right? It works the same way. It can dig lower, so it's got a better frequency response and output down low because it's able to put out more power. It looks exactly the same, except it says at the very end of the model number, it says IS at the end. The chassis is exactly the same, has the same number of outputs. I plugged that thing in, and I could not figure out for the life of me why channels 2 and 4 were duplicated. I thought they weren't working. But the amp was duplicating the output from channel 1 and 3 to 2 and 4. I'm like, why is it doing this? 4 hours. Until I realized it was an IS. And then you have that moment where it's just like something falls into place. And I just thought, crap, this is an IS. It only has 2 channels of DSP. So I wasted 4 hours. So now I have to get the other amp, which has 4 channels, and I'll be fine. But they don't have one in the United States, so it has to get flown in from Germany. And it has to be here before the 30th when Adam Peltz gets here. So,
You're always under the gun.
What would the Mad VR Experience Center be without turmoil, anxiety, and something to look forward to? But what I did realize is that I have been listening or had been listening to that theater for a long time without 4 of the 21s on. And Jeffrey told me, he's like, you won't notice. You notice. It's like what you notice in your face. It totally changed the experience. But enough about me. So that's my update. Your update, Jonathan. What's up with you?
Man, I don't have much of an update. I don't have anything.
New sub boxes?
I have new subs last week, but I haven't put the boxes yet. This weekend I have nothing on the roster, so I think I'm going to swap out, if they'll fit, I'm going to swap out one of those version 2s into the version 1 box and do some measurements and post them online, because there's a lot of curiosity, like how do the version 2 compare to the version 1? And if they fit in the box, it'll be a unique situation where I have both.
Why wouldn't they fit?
They changed the depth and the mounting diameter just slightly, so I'm not 100% sure they'll fit. It'll just be a practical thing. I'll just pull one out and see. I put them in with machine screws and what are they called? Hurricane nuts.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can pull it in and out as many times as I want without any damage to the box. So I'll just play with it a little bit.
Nothing else. You didn't have anxiety about your theater in any way, shape, or form?
Nothing. Nothing that critical.
So I had a customer buy a QB1000.
Yes.
He said we could open it.
Yes.
Yes.
Very
So when
exciting.
it comes in, I will let you know and we can play with it.
That'd be cool.
And we'll
I'd like to
probably
do a
do it at
side by
your
side.
house because I'd like to compare it to the LS12000
Sure.
and see how that goes.
We can get a little group together if you like from the Kansas City group, or if you just want it to be less, we can do that too.
We'll see. Sometimes less is more.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, less gets done. We'll have to all chat. What do you think? You think we should do a less is more or let everybody in? I'm open either way. I don't really care. I think it'll be pretty easy. I'm a jump to conclusions kind of guy. As soon as I see it, I'm gonna have an opinion about it, and then I'm gonna go from there. So I'll be able to say, is it worth it? Is it not worth it? Jonathan will be a little more critical, I'm sure, about it.
Well, it'll take a little while to dial it in, I think, to preference, because even something as simple as the sharpness settings, like I don't use the out of the box settings for LS12000. I customize one of the 5 options.
How hard is it to reset it?
Easy, very easy.
Because what we're probably going to want to do is just do an out of the box at the beginning. Because that's how most people, let's face it, that's how most people are going to use their projectors. That's what they're going to do. And I was actually talking to Jason Dustle about this because we're talking about doing something with M-Wave. And he agreed that, with the direction that TVs are going and projectors are going, the majority of people don't get them calibrated. So when you're doing these comparisons and stuff and everything's calibrated, what is that actually doing for the end user? Like they don't care. Like
well, there's a uniqueness on the LS products, unfortunately, on the Epson LS12000, and that dynamic mode is really the only mode you should use. And out of the box, it looks not good.
This was just me on a tangent.
Because that aggressive laser dimming and the full fade to black and the best contrast ratio by far are only available in dynamic mode, which makes 0 sense, but such it is. And there's been multiple requests gone to Epson corporate, say like, open this up to other modes. Why would you not have that aggressive dynamic options on the other modes?
Well, I think this one has dynamic tone mapping.
Okay, but that's different than dynamic laser.
Yeah, I get that. I'm just throwing. You said dynamic, and my brain went a different direction. Chad is saying we should live stream it.
That'd be cool. We certainly could, although the camera qualities.
I can bring my camera.
You think it'd pick it up okay? That'd be a good idea, actually.
I mean, it's a Nikon Z8, so I would think so. We can look at it, and I can stream maybe if I go directly to YouTube, I could probably put it up in 4K. I think. I don't know how my Mac would do. How
does it do long term if you're streaming high res like that? Are you doing 4K now or just 1080p?
It's capturing 4K, and then it's meant for this. No, not for this. It'll overheat if I'm writing, but if it's not writing, it's fine. It doesn't care.
Chad's like, just don't use Jonathan's camera. Look how much better that one is.
I really do like this camera. I had it at my daughter's practice yesterday. I took a picture. She was probably 50 yards away. And the zoom lens I'm using, it's like the maximum it has right now on this one. I'm going to get a bigger one. It's 120 millimeter. So the zoom isn't amazing. It can zoom a little bit, but the amount of megapixels and how far I could zoom in and still have detail without it looking blocky is astounding. Like it was like looking at an iPhone picture where the box on my picture, if the picture is the entire frame that you're seeing here, the box that I zoomed into on was like this big, and it was like looking at it on my iPhone. And it was like this big.
Huh. Nice.
Yeah. So let me get it in. I don't know when we would get it because they just started shipping. So I don't know when it'll come in, but yeah, we'll do that. Even if the camera's 100% accurate, we could learn a lot from hearing your reactions in real time. There's some danger to that too. I don't have much of a filter, so I always worry when stuff like that happens. But yeah, I think we should do that. So sorry, we got off on a tangent when you were talking about your
Like is this like months out? I don't know when they're delivering them. When you're taking
They
delivery.
started shipping. I have not ordered it yet because I haven't gotten the payment from the customer yet, but it's coming. Like it's inbound. It's processing, and then I'll get it ordered. So they've started shipping. I don't have a timeline though. I don't know what the delivery timeline is. The LS12000s are usually a week when I order them until I get them, as long as they're in stock.
There is a gentleman on my channel that mentioned if we didn't have access to one, that he would consider buying one and send it to me so I can spend some time reviewing it. I'll have to reach out to him and tell him to hold for now and see where this ends up.
I mean, if he wants to buy one, he should buy one. I think they're good projectors, but you're probably right. Hold off until we can put it through its paces.
Any chance you can get an NZ500 or NZ700 in that same time box? We can compare the three.
The problem with that is, what do I do with it afterwards?
You don't think you'll sell an NZ500 or NZ700? I know you don't want to. I understand, but that's like a hot model. There's a lot of people chomping at the bit for it, I think.
Chat, does anybody want an NZ500? I don't know. I'll see. I don't know if they're even shipping yet.
I don't either.
I'd have to look at that. How are things with your theater other than that? You had contemplated taking 2 of your heights down. They're
still up there. I haven't played with my. They're just silent right now. The 2 rear ones are not even turned on. They're not even being processed. Before I take them down, I want to split the signal between these front, like the top front and top rear. These are the top. How are these labeled? They're not front. They're top middle to front, top middle rear, whatever. Like they're in the center of the room. What's the right terminology?
You have 6?
4. There's 6 up here, but I'm only using 4. So it's. I think it's top. For some reason, I'm thinking top front is on the front wall, and that's not what I have them set up as a processor. I have to go look at my Marantz menu.
Top.
Is it front
left.
top versus top front?
Yeah.
Is that the monk here?
I think it's front top left or front left top. I don't know. Now you're confusing me. I'm like, I know, and now Jonathan's talking like I have no idea.
I'll look it up and tell you in a minute. At any rate, there's only 4. So they're just set up as 4. And what I was thinking about doing is making, you can't see it right here, but people see my room enough to know, the set that's back there, splitting the signal between these 2.
I remember you saying that.
But turning the SPL way down on the ones in the back. So it's kind of just like a little bit of fill, but it doesn't interfere with the soundstage from my front seats because it wouldn't be loud enough to even like make it up there. So I want to play with that before I take the speakers down.
The label is like how Storm does it. Left back top would be your rear one, and right back top, or
yeah, I'm checking out what Marantz
left middle top, right middle top.
AV10 manual.
Left front top, right front top. I'm just over here talking to myself.
Connecting speakers.
See, chat, we learn with you.
Well, we forget because we have too much in our creaky old brains.
No.
I know this. I don't remember it this.
MW, that'll come. We got to get through getting everything up. MW asks, Ryan, a video someday of showing the MadVR Experience Center's Officina panels and walls. That'll come. So we got to get the Hushbox done, and then I got to get the other panels in there, and then we'll do a video on it.
So as Marantz calls it, not that it'd probably be different for every little product, but Marantz calls them front height if they're on the front wall,
yes,
and rear height if they're on the rear wall,
yes,
and top front left and top front right if they're like the way I have them arranged. Top middle left, top middle right, and top rear left, top right, rear right. So it's no wonder it's a little confusing.
Everybody
front height left versus top front left.
Heights are your fronts and rears, and your tops are your overheads. Is how I've always known it. And then the order that you put the describing words, the adjectives, that's up for debate. So topic. I thought this would be an interesting one because I have some that go either way, and I'm sure you do too. Do certifications and do these metrics that these brands put out there and people put out there on their website, do they mean anything? And what do they mean if they mean something? So the first one that I'm going to talk about, because I think it's the freshest in most people's minds, is THX Dominus and the THX, whatever the one is underneath Dominus.
Ultra 2, maybe?
Ultra maybe.
2, and then Ultra, and then Select.
There's that many now?
There might even be one below Select.
Oh, my gosh.
Let me look it up.
Is below Select like your iPhone speaker?
Certification levels. Go ahead. You can continue. I'll tell you in a minute when I get it pulled up.
So a lot of companies, there's more and more that are doing this, are attaching these descriptors or certifications to their speakers. And I think it's a marketing move, right? I get why they're doing it. And I can see it potentially getting, I think for the majority of the people that it's working for, it's people that are probably uninformed, but that's probably where a lot of the certifications come from, or the marketing nomenclature, I'll say. Like, how do you feel when you see something like that? When you see a speaker that is X rated?
So, I mean, if we're only speaking about THX,
no, this is an open question.
Broader than maybe, but first off, in regards to previous discussion, Compact is the one right below Select. So there's Compact, Select, Ultra, Ultra 2, and Dominus.
Oh my gosh!
I think there might have been a Select 2 at one point too, but I wouldn't swear on it. At any rate, I still think there might be a little bit of merit in just saying like some certification is better than nothing. But I personally don't put a whole lot of water into THX certification anymore for a couple reasons. A, you don't know exactly what the certification does. And B, on multiple products, I've seen it not actually meet what THX reference is supposed to meet in an average size room. And that makes zero sense to me.
But we don't even know what the certification means.
Well, that's part of the problem. Like, can you get there if you blow up the speaker? Can you get to that SPL level if it like is compressing 5 dB and not acting right? Like it's not a linear progression in compression testing. How long does it have to hold it there before it overheats and doesn't perform? Like, I mean, I have a video on my channel, and I don't mean to do any kind of disrepair to the manufacturer, but it's a perfect example. We did a compression test on the Arndal.
I remember
1723. It didn't meet THX reference specs expectations in my room. Just didn't. And my speaker were like 10 or 11 feet away from the main listening position. Not a huge difference from what most people would do. And it was like 10 or 15 dB shy. Like, that's not okay to me. And so,
but do you think
what's
they
get doing with that logo?
Do you think they get away with it because they say it's rated and it can do it, but they don't tell you that it can do it at 1 meter?
That's very possible, but that's bullcrap is what it is.
I'm not saying that's Chad. I'm not saying that's what they're doing. I'm just throwing that out there because, you know, you measure something and it compresses and it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. Are they just twisting the words in order to say that, hey, it's technically true? You're just,
but it doesn't even make sense in that context. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I think it's got to be something like instantaneous peak that has no bearing on like an actual use case of trying to listen to a movie at THX volume or a scene at THX reference volume. I have a Crystal Acoustic THX reference Ultra 2 speaker sitting right over there. Long story. Single. It doesn't do it either.
I wonder why it's a single.
Yeah. It can't do THX reference either.
Did you find out it couldn't do THX reference?
No, this is kind of a frustrating story, and it's sort of silly. I'll just make it brief. Randy Bessinger, one of the guys in Kansas City, very nice gentleman. He loaned me a couple of those speakers to test years ago, probably 10 years ago. They were brand new out of the box.
Oh no.
They're gloss finished, like nice looking speakers. They were probably $800 a speaker or something. I brought them downstairs. I was testing with them, and my cat jumps up on one of the towers, and they're not very broad width. So the cat jumps up on the tower and it falls over, and it splits open, like the impact split open the back of the speaker. So I had to buy one of the speakers, and I've tried to sell it for $50 on like Facebook Marketplace for like 10 years. It's never sold. And I'm like one of those people that I like. If you won't, I'm not gonna give it away. Someone's got to pay me $50. It's gonna sit in my house forever. So it's still sitting in here. At any rate, at any rate, that was another example of like THX not meeting what it was supposed to meet. And I had some THX subwoofers from Yamo, however you say it, Yamo, Jamo, and they didn't hit what they were supposed to hit with their target. Like they were Ultra 2 subwoofers. And not only did they not hit what they promised, they blew up during one of our subwoofer comparison shootouts. Like they failed. One of them failed at the shootout, and the other one failed like 2 weeks later, watching Tron Legacy, which you always hear Tron Legacy killed subwoofers. It killed like 2 of my subwoofers. So I don't, personally, Jonathan speaking, I don't give a whole lot of merit to THX. Now, the other side of that, I like the standard. I love the THX reference standard that they created in the 70s or 80s or whatever it was. Fantastic. It's an attempt to have some standardization in our industry. I think they sell out to marketing.
Do you think it works?
I do think it works, and it worked for me. I remember buying my first couple receivers, specifically somewhat choosing the Onkios because they had THX certification and Denon did not at that time frame. Like the 805, for instance, the SR.
What did that mean at that point? Do you know?
You go into the movie theater and you hear the best intro logo of any movie. It's better than half the effects in the movie. The little, THX logo where it starts at 20,000 hertz and drops down to nothing. That whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, all right, they know sound. That's a fantastic intro. It's still, like we were talking about with Tim the other night when he's here, that's still the best intro of any of the little clips from anybody. Dolby Atmos hasn't beaten it. DTS hasn't beaten. That's still the best one.
Yes.
They must know what they're doing. George Lucas was behind it. It's the original standard. It's still the standard. Even all these years later, it's still the standard. They must know what they're doing. So I bought a couple of receivers. There was nothing wrong with receivers. They were good. That 805 is still a legend. It was one of the best receivers of its time and still noteworthy. But I think somewhere along the line, when you buy a pair of earbuds and it's THX certified, what does that even mean?
What does it mean when headphones are Atmos rated?
Sure. Worse yet. Absolutely. Or sound bars or stuff that are they got the
THX. The worst is laptops.
Yes. Yeah, what are you doing with that? You're
what
just
does that even
down your
mean?
Certificate. I don't your cert. I don't understand it.
But I guess it works. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it.
I think it absolutely works. And I wish they wouldn't water it down. I wish they would only put it on products that absolutely meet a stringent cert that is out there, that is like published, that is known, that is a quantity. Because the argument is, the people say, hey, if it's out there, then I'll just claim I meet the THX certification and I won't actually get the certificate. That might work for like a very educated consumer, but it's not going to work for like your average Joe who just goes into Best Buy and sees one has a logo and the other one says we meet it but doesn't have the certificate. I don't think.
It's like HDMI cables.
Yeah. I think that certificate would still have value even if they published the specs. And I wish they held it to that standard.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's any that hold merit? Doesn't necessarily have to be from like a piece of equipment.
I mean, I'd like to think that something like a HDMI.org cert would hold merit, that your HDMI cable is going to be foolproof, but it's not. It's maybe a better indication of some sort of quality and testing and stuff, but it doesn't mean every single one of those things is going to necessarily have been tested or work, or that the longevity is guaranteed. Like my, we talked about before, my Ruby Pro cable that died after 3 years, the send and receive unit, one of them failed or whatever. That doesn't mean, I guess the THX cert doesn't mean it's going to be like going to last 20 years or anything. I mean, what did I gain there? I don't know. I fall back also to the thing where it says it's better than nothing. At least there's some level of testing that was done on it to achieve the certification, where there's like at least some level of engineering. It's not just like white box garbage out of a van. That's beneficial, but I just wish it met what it said it was going to meet.
Well, I think there was one, you brought up HDMI, and if I remember correctly, to meet spec in that you only have to test one cable from one length from a family of cables. So if that cable passes, everything passes. I think it's just kind of brought in underneath the family hierarchy, which is really kind of dumb. Because if you touched a 10-foot, it doesn't mean that a 50-foot is going to work. And I think that's a big part of where this issue is, at least on the HDMI front, is becoming larger and larger and larger. Kind of the same thing with USB. I mean, USB has that same problem, doesn't it? Sometimes you get these longer USB cables and you're like, is this even going to work? Like, especially
unless
USB-C.
they've got a repeater, they only last like 15 feet, or they're only good for about 15 feet anyway.
Yeah. But then there's no nobody tells you that.
Mm-hmm.
And I know more people are going and needing these longer cables as we become more and more interconnected with our devices and things connecting to each other and all that. And if you don't know, you don't know. And if you don't know, like, a USB-C cable isn't going to give you the correct data rate, even though it says it's USB-C, I mean, I think a lot of it is out there just to confuse people, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about, like, certifications for equipment and people? Like, this is a really basic one on the IT side, but like CCNAs. Do you think that holds any merit? You and I are in the industry, or I was. Do those certifications hold any merit with you?
I do think they do, especially, I mean, that there's like a hierarchy of certs, right?
Yeah.
If you go to like a CISSP or something,
yeah,
I have that. That's the hardest cert I've gotten personally.
Mm-hmm.
It holds a lot of water with me because I know how hard I had to study for it and how much topic it covered, how much memorization there was with it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you could argue, hey, you memorized all that for the test, except for the books to memorize are like this fat. And by memorizing all those things by the virtue of how many questions are, like 400 questions.
It's a big test.
And it's a question bank that's thousands. Like, you don't know what you're going to get. You have to expose yourself to the topic. You really have to dig in to understand enough to even pass that test. So, like, if you're talking something that's a kind of a simpler entry-level test, maybe I don't give it as much weight. But there are certifications that have weight, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Now, in our industry, are there any certifications that you think hold weight?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the calibration certifications for video calibration stuff would hold,
like ISF.
Yes, I think so. Now, you get into a subjective versus, reference versus preference discussion at some point in here.
Mm-hmm.
But it's nice to kind of know what reference is. The same way that we know THX reference has a standard. If it's followed, to know what reference is nice.
Mm-hmm.
With you probably have more going around and dealings with people who have these certs who say or don't say they, know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
What's your take?
It can be hit or miss. I think it depends on the stringency at which those certifications are obtained. Like the Cisco ones, historically, there was some stringency around them. Like, it was, you had to meet certain criteria. It was done by a large body that meant something, that there was a lot of standardization behind. And I don't think our industry is quite there. Mm-hmm. Like, if you compare our industry, the residential side, to the commercial side, I think the commercial side has a lot more of this. And the residential side is just almost in part kind of fly by the seat of your pants.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's up more towards the manufacturers to do this and how stringent they want to be. It's an example of this, of one that I think, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. This is one that I know well, so I'm going to say it. MadVR is doing a, what are they calling it? I had it and now my mind is blank. Certified for NV program. And so you have to go through and you have to take tests in order to prove to the manufacturer that you know what you're talking about. And only then are you allowed to say, as a dealer or custom integrator, that you meet a certain criteria, that you understand how these things are getting put in or can troubleshoot and do all of this stuff. The problem with that, and I really like that program from like a manufacturer looking at dealers, the problem then becomes, how do you get the end user to recognize stuff like that? Which I think is a big issue in the industry as a whole, is the end user really only understands and deals with the marketing rhetoric, like what they're marketed to. In this case, the reason Atmos works is because it's everywhere, right? Atmos, I think, is way more recognizable than DTS, even though I personally like DTS-X typically more than Atmos. But if I asked somebody what is DTS, they'd have no idea. But if I asked them what Atmos is, if somebody has any interest in home theater, like putting one in, I bet you they could say what it is, or at least tell me it's a surround sound thing. So I think it's a big, unfortunately.
When you say DTS, you're referring to DTS-X in this context.
Yes,
you shorted it.
Yes, yes. Unfortunately, I think a big part of this industry is about how much you can put the marketing in front of people to get them to recognize it, which is kind of sad, because I wish, like a certified for envy, if a dealer saw that, and maybe it's just an emblem. Maybe people just like the pictures on boxes, right? Like you did with the THX, and said, oh, I like this picture. And I kind of know what this is, so I'm going to get this. Or the certification must be real because they wouldn't lie to me, would they? And buy it. Is Atmos or DTS-X a cert? It's a technology. I'm not saying that I'm sorry I'm lumping this together. I'm not saying that everything is a certification. I'm just kind of lumping it all together on recognizability is what I did there. Sorry. But
MW getting up with the comments here.
MW kind of brings up a good point with the Atmos stuff. Is it just the technology that they're utilizing, and that's why they're able to call it that? What? I don't even know. Chat, does anybody know how or why they put an Atmos designation on some laptops? What does that even mean?
They've lowered the bar very low, and they meet the very low bar.
I'm waiting for the next Samsung phone to be like, Atmos ready.
I'm sure there's something like that out there.
I'm sure there is.
I've certainly seen it on laptops just like you have. Like, that doesn't make any sense. I'm sure there is. Speaker that you can't hardly hear over the AC system, you know?
So Classy Tech brings up a good point in the video calibration certifications need updating and more criteria, in his opinion, and ongoing recertification as the industry changes. That is an excellent topic you bring up. I think there's not enough coming back to and circling around. Like, if I become ISF certified, I don't know that you ever have to go back and do that again. You're just forever ISF certified.
How easy are the questions, chat, with ISF certification, for instance? Is this something you can memorize in like a weekend, or is this something you really have to know your stuff and have hands-on experience to be able to answer through the question bank?
Most of the guys that I know that have gotten it have taken like a 3-day course and then or a week course and become certified.
See, I start to question the value of a cert when it's short like that.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. I've dealt with a lot of dealers, and this is not a push down on dealers. It's just there's a lot of knowledge that is missed. And I think a big part of that is because a lot of the people that work in the industry are doing just that. They're working in the industry. This is not their hobby. This is their work. And if I ask Jonathan, is his work his hobby? No. That was a no. A lot of people's work is not their hobby. I'm blessed enough that mine is, but the majority of people, their work is not their hobby. And because of that, I think there's very little incentive for them to go self-learn and push themselves to get more and more into this industry and understand what's going on and figure it out. Tiki Time says Velcro your laptop to the ceiling is the proper way to do Atmos. Yeah, Tito, no beard. I messed up when I was shaving, and it all had to go, unfortunately. Classy says he's the guy that brought up the topic on coming back and getting recertified. Nope, you don't. ISF is very easy to pass. You do not need to know how to go through the workflow and basics, etc. But the cert doesn't. You do need to know how to go through the workflow and basics, etc. But the cert doesn't mean you have the proper equipment or understand all displays, etc. And I think that's a problem, because if all the certification means is you can go through the workflow, which is just put in front of you, but you don't understand the process, how can you know how to fix issues that may arise in front of you? And then that leads to customers getting into poor experiences because they're left with a subpar implementation because the implementer doesn't know or recognize that there may be an issue.
Along those same lines, Classy Tech Calibration says that the technology has changed enough that it's not the same. You know, if you're calibrating plasma or the older style displays, it's not the same as the modern stuff.
Look at what the problems Andy and Nick have trying to calibrate bulb projectors and lasers.
Yeah, I mean, the tool set doesn't even work the same way between bulbs and lasers.
I think our industry really, really needs help. And it needs help in a way that I think the only way you can change it is by empowering the end user and making them more knowledgeable. I don't even know if that's possible. Making them more knowledgeable so that they have a higher expectation from the people installing stuff. I mean, I'm trying to think of a good example of this. Like cars and safety ratings and horsepower and torque and all of these universally comparable things that can be measured. There's standards around them. If you lie, you get in trouble, potentially. I just wish there was more of that in this industry, and it wasn't just kind of, let me just blow smoke up your butt and see where you end up. So...
yeah, so I recalled something I meant to say earlier. I'm going to rewind the conversation back towards the beginning of our THX calibration. And you had mentioned, like, well, what if it means that it's for, like, very close rooms or very small, like they're 1 meter away or something? The problem with that is they put in their specs, like the Compact, Select, Ultra, and Dominus, how big of a room or how much cubic feet is in the room. So, like, 3,500 cubic foot versus 1,500 cubic foot, those type of numbers. And the assumption isn't that in a 3,500 foot cubic foot room, you'd put the speaker at 1 meter. You know what I mean? Like, the assumption is that you're going to have it at 10 or 12 feet. And they even put specs in there like THX. I mean, maybe this is external to that, but, you know, a certain level of sensitivity is expected with something that's like a THX reference speaker, because it can't, most receivers, like if you were branding a speaker as THX reference without giving a power to it, without branding the power, how are you doing that unless the speaker is very sensitive and can work on the whole? Like, say, pulling a number that's pretty reasonable, like 92 dB sensitive or above, will typically, if it's a true 92 dB sensitive speaker, will typically at 120 watts get you to reference-ish levels. So you can't put a THX logo on a 83 dB speaker sensitivity because it won't get there with a traditional amplifier. You would have to put like 300 or 500 watts or something on it.
So what I hear you saying is that specs and certifications are meaningless unless you understand how they were obtained.
Right. There's that. And then there's things where they would have to be collectively together. So that's why they started kind of putting those boundaries in. That's why they have those different tiers for the different size rooms. But I don't think it's necessarily tied together complete enough. A passive speaker, for instance, and long and short, should probably not be THX certified unless it has a accompanying amp that they know in that room will power it to that level. Because how could you have a speaker that's THX calibrated or certified if you don't know what power it's being, driven by? If it's running on a cheap Pioneer head unit or let's even just say an AVR, some of the Pioneer units did a nanny mode and run the surrounds at like 20 watts, even though they advertised at like 100 watts. If you have a low sensitivity speaker, you're not getting anywhere near reference with 20 watts.
That is a really good point on the AVR, where they'll mislead you and say this is 100 watts per channel, but then you look at the spec and it's like 2 channels driven.
Right. Or even 1 channel driven, which makes 0 sense in an AVR because you'll never have 1 channel driven.
I mean, maybe that's how I like listening to my speakers, Jonathan. Mono. Can you imagine
7-channel AVR and we're measuring at 1 channel driven?
Can you imagine walking into somebody's home theater for a home theater meet and there's just 1 speaker?
I traded it all in. All of it traded in for 1 Black Swan. It's
right Atmos, 1 speaker.
Yeah.
Oh man. And Bruce, you do bring up a good point. He says in the 90s, Japanese cars said they were all 287 horsepower. Now, I think, Bruce, they were all above that because that was the max they could do. I think. Maybe not. But you do bring up a good point. It's more like the safety standard and stuff. I think everything is lied about because it's more expensive to do proper testing. We just expect more. Maybe we're the problem. Our expectations are too high. Maybe that's the issue. Tito, we absolutely need more people like Gene, Aaron's Audio Corner, Amir from Audio Science Review. They do really, really good work, and they're a very, very important part of the industry to make sure that things are right. And I really think that if there is a subset of companies that are willing to do all of this, what we're talking about, and there are a few of them, ones that come to mind right now, a lot of them kind of fringe on the commercial side. I won't name names. But there are a few, and I think they're growing rapidly. I just think we need to get their names more out there. And try and provide some more accessible data that is maybe more easily digestible. Because if I show a lot of people a Clipple, they're going to have no idea what they're looking at. So providing an easily digestible way to look at that information is really important. Anything in closing? No,
when I saw your topic that you selected for tonight, I was thinking you were going to be going more of the industry standards type ways for like certifications for individual calibrators, that type of thing. But
we kind of talked about that.
Yep.
I think they're all kind of crap. Unfortunately, you got to know the people to make sure they know what they're talking about, because a big part of this stuff is just words on a piece of paper. Doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's like reading a resume. Like, is it actually true? I don't know. That's why you got to have the interview. But let's talk about the people's questions. MW, you can talk about RP22. RP22, RP10, RP23, they're all really trying to push that, but the general public has no idea what those are. I think they're great, and I think they're fantastic for the industry, but what are they... How do we make them more mainstream?
We have failed. We have failed.
Oops, sorry.
Let's start all over. We didn't get our.
There was a topic. I talked about the topic before everybody got here. You guys are just all late. So let's answer some questions. There's not very many of them, but we'll go through them. If you see any other ones come up, Jonathan, let me know.
Yeah.
These are first in, first out. So MW asked, what's the filter on the modded lens? Filtering out. So the filter, we're talking about the Griffin and the MadVR Experience Center. It wasn't actually a filter. It was an aperture, and it increased native contrast. So I was supposed to get 10,000 to 1, but I would have lost another probably 20 to 30% of my lumens. And the ANSI contrast on the Griffin is so high that I don't miss it at all. You look in the middle of the screen and it looks black. It doesn't look wrong. It looks black. So it's supposed to add native contrast through an aperture, but it was causing all
Is
kinds
it
of
something
problems.
you could pursue later? Because it seems like you don't need. I mean, do you really? You're not using 1,000 nits. You're probably running it more at the 30% side of things, aren't you? Maybe.
No, normally I'm at 30%.
Right. So you
I
have
could
lumens to
revisit.
spare.
I could revisit.
How is it expensive to do the mod, or is it relatively inexpensive? Because that kind of stuff in the world of photography, I'm told, ranges all over the board. You can get filters for next to nothing, and you can spend thousands of dollars on filters.
It's an internal aperture lens mod, so they actually modify the lens, and it's a couple $1,000s.
Not just like adhering Walmart tint on there, I guess, huh?
No. Hey guys, imagine if it was that easy. You could just put like a piece of wax paper over top of the lens of your projector.
Gotta work that
I've
bubble out.
doubled my contrast. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Oh, ISF certified calibrators. I'm out here doubling the contrast of everybody's projector, just slinging wax paper everywhere. Anyway, Oops Sorry asks, I've looked at a lot of PA speakers and it seems like you're better off buying the low-end models as power level seems to be the only difference. Don't need a sound to go across town, though. What do you think? Jonathan, you're the PA man.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. Power levels are one difference, but that's not
Yeah.
the only difference. You can look
No.
at polar plots. You can look at basically the rigidity of the cabinet is one of the things I've seen in chat quite a bit. You can look at like the long-term power handling. Like there's other things that go into the equation, but that's not to say that you can't buy a lower end model and get a lot of performance, which is why I'm a big fan of Pro Audio speakers. As we talked about before, $200 or $300 gets you into the reference ball game way more than like a Best Buy speaker for $200 or $300.
A Best Buy speaker for $200 or $300 is you'd be in trouble.
It'd blow up at reference, or it wouldn't last very long.
Or your cat would knock it over. Okay. Good question.
Yeah, and also there's like more resilient power crossover networks and so forth.
Mhm.
Like the cheaper PA speakers will have cheaper crossover networks. They won't be as finely tuned, which you could argue doesn't matter as much if you're going to apply EQ or with room modes and nulls. It may not matter that much, but a better crossover network that is more resilient to power overages. Like for instance, my JBL CBT 70J1s that I have, a very complex network that has some actually light bulbs in there that act as kind of like as odd as that sounds. It's common in the higher end PA stuff because they'll basically take power away. If there's too much power being sent to the board, they will glow brighter, which will take away some of the extra power that's going to the board to keep your speakers in a safe amount of voltage that's going to them. So like that kind of stuff gets introduced as you go up the chain. If you buy a $200 or $300 PA speaker, you're not going to have that kind of crossover board in there.
So you're saying your speaker wants to be an Optima projector?
I'm saying you can throw 4,000 watts at those speakers and it will absorb it because there's light bulbs in there that take some of the power away from overloading the drivers. The drivers won't take 4,000 watts.
I'm just imagining you going up to some random Joe on the street and just going, my speakers are better than yours because they have light bulbs in them.
I'm just talking about some of the ways that they can improve the quality of the product.
Fair.
And then less distortion and everything as you go up the stack too, just like anything else with the better drivers.
Mm-hmm.
Diminishing returns sets in for sure, but there's gains to be had above $200 or $300.
Yep, agreed. Adam says, how would you compare a Rhythmic F18 to a DIY sealed with a UM18?
I think Database had a Rhythmic F15.
This is an 18 though.
HP versus an 18, and I think Rhythmic's F18 is fairly comparable to their 15 HP. So go to Database, and you can do a comparison there, Adam, on the two. Yeah. Rhythmic is going to have a little bit more polished product, and the UM18 is probably going to have a little bit more output at the risk of having a little bit more distortion.
Mm-hmm.
The Rhythmic is a servo. We've talked about that before on here. Servo controls reins in the driver. If it starts experiencing too much distortion, it basically will not let that driver make a bad sound. And if you're doing do-it-yourself amps with the UM18, you could overpower the UM18 and go into distortion or mechanical noise or anything else.
Or blow it up.
Yeah, or smoke the voice coils.
Yep.
Yeah, you have your options there.
Yeah. You have your options in how you want to kill your subwoofer.
Now, if you're just talking about if you know what you're doing and you want to just supply controlled power and really take it out there, the UM18 will have more output, I think, than the Ribbon F18, according to the database testing.
Yes.
Because he threw I think he threw short term up to like 4,000 watts or something on that UM1822. I'd have to go back out there and review it, but quite a lot of power, more than you'd ever run it for like long term, but just to burp it, and it'll put out a lot of output at that point. And the Rhythmic just doesn't have the amp to do that. They don't want to do that. There's no reason to do that. That's more than the driver can do. Just like the UM18, more than it can do. Whether it can handle it for a short while is one thing, but whether you want it to do it continually is another. And Rhythmic's in the ball game to make sure that they have a very clean product and then they're not blowing it up so that they have to mess with RMAs and returns and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well spoken. William Graham says, I think you guys should do a what should you buy first part 2 regarding the electronics geared towards someone starting fresh or just have a home theater in the box. Okay. Maybe I'll do that next week.
Too Friday. Close. We just did that one.
Yeah, you're right. What should we do next week?
We'll get some ideas in the chat.
Okay. Chat, need ideas. We already answered that one.
You can go back to that one. I think it's a good one. I'm not afraid of it.
Cheap PA speakers suck. The boxes are plastic and mixed plastics have echo.
I have something to show you. Let me pull it up. I think you're wrong, and I can.
Well, you could probably get a better experience if you put the speaker that you're about to put up in a better cabinet.
Let's talk about this. Tell me if my screen shows and if it's blown out. Is it okay?
Yeah, you can zoom in.
Let's close that. Okay. Can you see it? Is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me find. All right. So I did exactly this testing with a cheap PA speaker. This is one I've talked about before, the Mackie C200. It was at the time a $200 PA speaker with the definition of a cheap plastic enclosure. This was its frequency response. Can I make it bigger? Let's get it to where we can see it real good. Oh, that made it smaller, didn't it? Because of the ad. Okay. So this was its frequency response native with a close mic setup without poly stuffing in the red. See how there's like a little cabinet resonance here?
Mm-hmm.
About a 5 dB cabinet resonance. I poly stuffed it. This is nothing more. I didn't put any kind of like Dynamat or anything like that. And I just stuffed poly in there to fill up the cabinet to the suggested way from the forums. It's like 1 pound per cubic foot or something. And all of a sudden that resonance is gone because the poly took away the resonance. So it's exactly the same up here. But down here, you got rid of that resonance. And then down here, we got like a harmonic distortion. The bass decay looked a little bit better. So here's the bass decay stock. We got a little bit of an extra resonance here that got tamed by the polyfill.
Mm-hmm.
This was the speaker. This was the way I was measuring it, just like the mic's right here, kind of between the woofer and the tweeter. Sorry about the photo bucket overlays. But to give you an idea, here's the tweeter. Here's the woofer. The mic's kind of in the middle. I had some acoustic, what is that, rock wool behind there, just to kind of catch any back wave. Room's open. So just to kind of give you an idea, like, I mean, you can see the cabinet here. It's just plastic, nothing fancy. And there's the polyfill in there that we talked about. And that speaker was excellent for that price. For $200, that speaker was just excellent. So, you know, like if you had a little problem.
Did you do any compression testing?
It would do full reference. Let me show you that. That's in here too. Let's go this way. Compression. And then this thread. Here we go. So here's your compression test. So you remember on my Arundel video that I did the 1723s, how this thing was just falling down on its face up here. This is 105 dB right here. So we go across, go across, go across, and it's hitting 105 dB just fine. And that's at 1 meter. Same sort of testing setup.
Mm-hmm.
So, yep.
The pro side's got it made.
All right. Now, if I can figure out how to stop this again, here we go.
Just hit the
Stop
the
screen
monitor.
share. There we go.
And I think a big reason that that's able to happen on the pro side is because of standardization and the people's livelihoods being dependent on it. And if they didn't get that kind of stuff from, or expect that kind of stuff from a company, they're just it's not gonna work. And on the flip side of that, if a company doesn't deliver what they say they're delivering, they're not going to stay in business. So we just need to make that, I think, more of a thing on the residential side.
Now, there's a couple pieces to that as well. There's quantities of scale with manufacturing that allow that to be so cheap. They're not spending anything on the cabinet. Those are just mass molded. There's not any hands that are building it, like with a craftsman work, that make the price go up.
Mm-hmm.
They're using drivers that would cost you as much as the components. Like, effectively, one of the questions I asked in that thread, it's Mackie under the hood, Mackie C200 under the hood, if you want to read more about it on AVS Forum. They're using drivers that I asked the do-it-yourself crowd. Like, if you're going to spend, and the guys on AVS and the do-it-yourself crowd, first off, they're very knowledgeable. They build crossover units. They know all the different drivers from like Parts Express and the different places to. I just simply asked, like, if you wanted to take this speaker to the next level in the same cabinet and you wanted to upgrade the woofer or the compression driver, what would be a leg up without spending a whole lot of money? They said you couldn't leg up that speaker. You couldn't take it to the next tier without spending more than what you paid on the speaker. And they said at that point, it doesn't make sense to upgrade that speaker. You just go to a next tier of speaker. So the point being, like, the woofer and the compression driver to a consumer like you or I would cost more than the $200 that the speaker sold for. Like, you couldn't get those parts for less, not to mention the crossover and the box. So the quantity of scale that Mackie has, building these things on a global scale, they can get those prices down to, toy prices.
Mm-hmm.
And another example, at church, there's a speaker that they've borrowed bought for the youth room from Costco or Sam's or something. It's called Icon. I'm not even familiar with the brand, and I'm not recommending them. I don't know enough about them to recommend them. But I'm telling you, there is a whole lot of features packed into that speaker for the $200 price point. It's got like Bluetooth, it's got LED lighting, it's got microphone, it's got like one of those kind of like my JBL ones where it's got a little soundboard built in for mixing on the side with like a guitar and a vocal, and like basically a little soundboard built into the side of the speaker for $200. And it's got like a 15-inch driver in it, and it's like that's wild. So that's that quantity of scale again. And it gets loud. I mean, they're made for doing a small, band or something.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that there's some sort of pinnacle of quality by any means, but a lot of value there.
There is. That's a good diminishing returns price point too. I don't think we realize how quickly diminishing returns sets in a lot of this stuff that we're going after. MW says the main reason, or the main thing with PAs, they often use a higher crossover to protect the driver. Home they are happy to go lower. They are happy to go lower on a lot of their woofers. One thing that I've noticed though is typically when they go lower, a lot of compression can set in at those points.
And they're port tuned higher. The cabinets are typically port tuned higher. And it's not only to protect the driver, but it's also to raise the sensitivity. Because if the driver doesn't have to play as low, then they can raise the sensitivity of the driver and get more output into the audience. Which is what the point of it is. And then they have subwoofers for the bass output. They're not worried about that part in live sound.
All great points. Christian with the $5 super chat. Thank you very much, my good friend.
Thanks,
what are your thoughts on the Christie projectors in the 10 to 15K range versus other brands? So that would be the 860 from Christie. The 860 is a single chip DLP. Its contrast is going to be somewhere around 1,500 to 1, but it is delivering 7,500 lumens for that price point. It's ultra sharp because it's DLP. The compromise is you're losing native contrast. So it's got a lot of light output. It's got very high sharpness from the DLP, but it doesn't have a lot of native contrast. There was one in Soundroom 4 at Cedia, and it looked really good. If you put it next to, say, an M4K15, a Griffin, a Epson, a JVC or something, you're going to notice the black floor. Absolutely. But if you need the light output and you want the sharpness, it's a great projector. And it's the cool thing about a lot of that, especially when you start getting into companies like Christie and Barco, which are on the commercial side, you start to get the commercial features, and there's a lot of cool things that you can do with them, especially as you go up in the price range, that you realize that the reason they're there is because of commercial theater, but they're very beneficial as you get into home theater as well. Like multi-zone white point, multi-area focus, the Griffin and I think the M4K both have it. Picture in a picture, which I thought died out on TVs a long time ago. They have a bunch of other stuff. And the 860 being its little brother, it's got some cool features as well. So it's a good projector. It just depends on what you need. Don't expect it to be a black floor king, though, because it's not going to happen. And then you had another one, Christian. Oh, like the 4K 860 is what he says, which I already touched on.
Remind me what projector was at the M-Wave comparison room this year? Was it Barco or Christie that had their?
I think it was
entry
the
model?
860. I think.
Christie 860.
Mm-hmm. But I don't think they were doing it any favors with how it was set up. And of course it's going to lose in that situation.
Something was not quite right in that setup. I'm not sure what it was.
What looked wrong? I didn't see it.
Well, the colors weren't quite right. It didn't seem like it was handling HDR very well in the particular config out of the box. Like it didn't have a processor or anything, I don't think, hooked up to it, and I think it needs one.
Yes. So when you start getting into the pro stuff, you need a processor. It's going to struggle because they're designed with that in mind. I mean, they're not designed for the tone mapping and stuff. I mean, you do that on the Griffin. No, it does not look good. It doesn't know what to do with the tone mapping. So take that for what it is. But if you can make it work, it's a good projector.
And then, Christian, this is going to be unique to you if you have any kind of struggle with DLP rainbow flashing.
PWM.
Or PWM.
Yeah.
Some of those entry-level DLP projectors on the high-end products, or even going up the stack, if you're sensitive to those things, they're not for you, because you can see rainbows and you can see flashing. Mm-hmm. If you're not sensitive to it, like probably 90% of the population that isn't sensitive to it, then don't give that any credence. But if you are sensitive, you won't want to watch it.
But Jonathan is.
I am, and so that's why I'm giving you that caution, because you wouldn't want to buy it and then be like, oh boy, I can't use this.
Next question, Chris Stovall. Very intrigued by the CBT70J1. Only concern is plastic housing and ringing in the enclosure. Any hope of addressing this?
Chris, let me send you to AVS Forum and look up CBT70J1 on AVS Forum. I started a thread there, and we talk about some of those things in that thread. One of the things that I figured out with that, they are a plastic cabinet. I haven't noticed, like when you do a close mic measurement or so forth, and I have that on the thread, it doesn't have like 5 dB variance like the C200 had. Smaller drivers indicate, help that, and the design helps that. But long story short, there is some resonance issues, and I think that I've narrowed that down mostly to let me see if I can show this better. So the box, this isn't very good. Sorry. The box is behind the tweeter array, and the tweeter array comes unscrewed with 10 screws, or maybe it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12 screws. So that tweeter array comes off. What I figured out, some of the resonance that's most annoying is that tweeter array, as it connects to the cabinet, is plastic on plastic, and it's no more difficult than taking off that tweeter array and installing some small rubber washers between the tweeter array and the cabinet, and that eliminates the worst of the resonance that I've heard with these so far. And I've had them since 2017. So
I've
I'm pretty
never heard
familiar
any
with
of your
them.
speakers resonate. Well, the front right one was, but that was the
Yeah,
only time I've
and
ever
that
heard
was
that.
one I hadn't. I had just put that one in because
Mm.
I'd replaced it, and I hadn't put in the washers. So the washers seem to
Yep. I've
fix that.
never heard yours resonate. Okay. We already did that. Let's discuss plastic speakers, please. Did that.
What's with all the plastic speakers comment tonight? How did
I
that
don't
spin up?
know.
That was coming in a time where we hadn't even talked about any of that.
Is Lucasfilm THX different than THXX?
I think he means DTSX. Is that possible? Because there is no THXX, is there?
Maybe he was just using that as a identifier, like THX XXXX, like it being different. I don't know.
Richard, you might have to give us another comment.
Yeah, clarify if you don't mind. Richard then asks, Ryan, what do you think about Cherry Class D amps? I think they're great. I think they're really well made. They have very, very low distortion. They have great power. Unfortunately, the guy behind them passed away a couple years ago, and I do not believe they're manufactured anymore. If they are, they're being done by somebody else, maybe a family member or something. But yeah, they're good. If you can get one, they're good amps. Anything to add to that, Jonathan?
No,
I know Michael Boker loves them.
Yep, he's a big advocate for them.
Yep. MWS, is that the same with the M4K15? He's asking specifically about the lens mod. And yes, you can get the lens mod for the M4K15. There was one done at M-Wave this year that went 16,000 to 1 for native contrast. Now you're sacrificing more light output, so then it becomes a question of, why are you doing a Christie unless you're really after the DLP? If you're going to sacrifice that amount of light, like what are you gaining? You could just do something like a JVC. So I think it's always a give and take. And with a high enough ANSI contrast, I am perfectly fine being at where I am right now, and it's mind-blowing to me. So I think if you're going to buy a Christie or a Barco, you should use them for what they're good at and not try and make them something that they're not. Just making sure we're not getting any other questions as I go through these. William Graham asks, would love to hear objective, subjective comparisons between Ascendo versus JTR, looking into Ascendo the 10s, the 6s, or JTR 210HT and 110HT. William, I have done these with a couple different people. PM me or email me at ryan@hometheatersavants.com. I've done these tests. I won't talk about this here because I think they're both good brands at what they do. We're not here to poo-poo on anybody. So just shoot me a message and we can chat about that offline. But those tests are really important, and I wish more people would do objective testing like that. I understand that they're very difficult to do because there's a lot of thought process, there's a lot of setup. I didn't realize how much would go into that stuff until I started doing them. My first wake-up call with Jonathan was the first amp test we did, and I realized, oh my gosh, this is way more complicated than I thought it was. And I've done several since then, and to do them correctly, there's a lot of things you got to consider, and it gets overlooked by a good number of people, including manufacturers and companies, maybe because they're trying to market and make their stuff look better. But I've done that. So last question. Tiki time. Are your home theater settings different for different sources? DVD streaming, over-the-air, Kscape. Jonathan?
Sure.
I've answered the last couple.
Sure. I assume he's talking about like our trim levels, how much bass you apply, that kind of stuff. Or
That'd be my guess.
Video calibration settings even maybe?
Maybe.
HDR versus SDR type things? Yes, they are. Like my music settings, I run the bass a little hotter than I do for movies relative to what pure reference would be. And that just comes down to subjective preference at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything that you notice needs more than something else?
Not necessarily. Like just in general, like my Apple TV, since I watch most of my music on Apple TV, that ends up getting on that particular input. I set the bass about 3 dB hotter than I do on my Blu-ray player or on my computer, because that's where I primarily play movies from.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm the same way. My music's usually a little bit hotter on the bass than my home theater stuff. I'm trying to think of sources.
I'll tell you one thing. Pixel Pusher calibrated my Epson LS12000 last time he was here for M-Wave, and he gave me 2 settings to play with. And previously, I had just used my Archaea settings on both HDR and SDR, and it was good enough. But there is a difference with the calibrated settings between SDR and HDR content on the LS12000, and it, like, if you want to really get that last little bit, I got to toggle it. I got to toggle it for, if it's SDR picture, I toggle it to his SDR settings. If it's HDR, I toggle it to his HDR settings, and it looks different between the two. So half the time I'm still in my Archaea settings. There's still things I like about that. It's oversaturated colors, which I like.
I like them too.
Vivid. But if you're trying to go accurate, I can tell a difference between his 2 settings. And so that's interesting to me. And I wish that wasn't that way. And I think JVC might do this. Is that true? Where it will automatically, if you have a HDR signal, it automatically switch to your HDR.
You can set it up however you want. Yes.
Epson doesn't do that. I have to push a button to switch that.
Yeah. JVC will allow you to change things on content type, on all different kinds of stuff. And then you can actually set them to be identical, to be different, you can disable tone mapping and set a traditional gamma function if you want to. There's all different kinds of stuff you can do. JVC gives you a lot of granular control, which I really like.
It kind of annoyed me at the time, to be honest, because if I wanted it to be in a certain setting, it was always toggling back to something else. Whereas at the time, I was just using Archaea for everything on the Epson. But now I'm kind of like learning a little bit more of why that would be. These little differences when you get them calibrated.
Christian asks, thank you again for the $5. Much appreciated. And guys, you do not need to feel like you need to provide super chats at all. You can just ask questions. It's perfectly okay. But we do appreciate it.
Thank you, Christian.
How much light were you getting from the Christie with the mod? Can you do the same mod for the 25K lumen version and get the best of both? You absolutely can. You're just going to, the 10,000 to 1 native contrast, you're going to lose the ultra high contrast lens, which I have on the Mad VR Experience Center's Griffin. You lose about 30% of your light output. So imagine if I had the normal lens, I'd probably have 2,500 to 1 native contrast, but I would go from 24,000 lumens to 35,000 lumens or something like that. I don't know. So I'd be well over 1,000 nits at that point. If you layer on the 10,000 lens mod, the 10,000 to 1, you're going to drop another 20 to 30%. So now you're getting half or less than half of your rated light output. So you'd be at something like, I don't know, 300 or 400 nits. The problem then becomes, though, that the lens mod is an aperture, and there is so much light that going through a smaller hole, if you turn the laser up too high, you can melt the aperture and smoke the lens. So the recommendation is don't do that, and that's why Christie and Barco haven't really pushed too much further. We've been pushing to do stuff like this, but that's a big reason why it hasn't happened. And I can tell you, and Christian, if you're in the market, I would highly encourage you. I'll fly you out, have you take a look, and you can make a decision for yourself. Everybody that I have shown the Griffin to is like, I don't need any more than that.
1,000 nits.
Well, I'm talking about the ANSI contrast and stuff. I mean, it's a game changer, especially when you can watch something. Everybody thinks that this is going to hurt my eyes. And we watched Encanto, like the Don't Talk About Bruno scene. It was amazing. And when she walks out of the dark area and puts her hand over her eyes, you do the same thing. She's like, oh my God, HDR in my face. But then you realize that she's doing it. And you're like, was I supposed to do that? And then you go right back, your eyes adjust, and you're back to having it amazing. So I think it's incredible. I will not watch it fully at 1,000 nits, though they do say, I think I can watch at 100% laser power, like for 40,000 hours or something like that. So I could, if I wanted to, I may lose my eyesight eventually because it's like standing in front of a car headlight for X amount of time. But that's, yeah, good times. Anything in closing, Jonathan?
No, there's another comment I pinned in there that had come up kind of near the end. Any update on M-Wave next year from Chris?
So
Need a little more time on that one.
I have a meeting scheduled next week with some players in the industry, and we are going to start working on it. So I don't know when it is going to happen, but at this point, it is going to happen. It's going to happen. Don't worry. It'll probably be later in the year, would be my guess. Or we may skip next year and come up on like the beginning of the spring of 26. We'll see. There's some things that are going to take a while because we're trying to get more people involved and make it bigger and make it more of an industry thing. So that's good for everybody, though, because it means more education, more learning, more of what I think this community wants, and it's going to come from the right people. We're just going to do it in a way that I think is we're going to try and push the industry in the direction that we've been talking about here and making it more objective and really holding people accountable and companies accountable, like what MW brought up with RP22, 23, and RP10. That's the direction that we're gonna try and go. So good question. It's coming. Meetings have started, which is good. We had to wait until long enough after CEDIA that people recovered from the CEDIA sickness because everybody got COVID and after CEDIA. Par for the course.
You offering tickets to fly out somebody for a product demo. He's with like an Optima demo.
Optima, I do have one. Can you imagine? I should do that. I should put the Optima on top of the Griffin and be like, you ready for the comparison? And turn the Optima on the same time as the Christie and see if you can even see it.
No, you wouldn't see it. And then MW says he wants to fly in from Australia if you'll give him a ticket. So you got some people wanting to take you up on your offer.
Potentially. My thing is how I do it with the showroom is if you're interested, right? You fly out. If we do something, like if we do a build or something, I'll cover the cost of your flight. So it's not off the table. It's not out of the question, MW. If, you're a little far away, but maybe we could work something out. But that is the offer that I usually put out for people, that if you fly out and then we do something or you want to see something and make sure that it's right for you, I'll cover the cost of your flight.
There's of course reason that has
reasonable,
to be
yes.
If you want to fly out for an Optima,
you're not flying we're not flying Emirates or any Singapore Air or something like that.
I'd like to buy an HDMI cable. Will you fly me in?
I'd like some a speak on and some banana plugs, please. It's within reason, but yes. So if anybody's interested, Ryan at hometheatersavants.com. And even if it's just questions. And Jonathan's the same way. I know Jonathan and I both love talking about this. We're very blessed that we're in positions where our hobbies have gotten to a point where, we feel like we can help people in the industry not make all the same mistakes that we have, because there have been numerous and I continue to make them. Like I was wondering why I wasn't getting an HDMI signal to my projector and realized that the splitter wasn't turned on because I'm dumb. And I'm like, what is going on? And it's on the wrong output. Jesus. No matter how long you're in this, you still make stupid mistakes. Mm-hmm. But what can you do? Mike Stevens, will you fly me out for a Bose Acoustimass demo? No. No. But I got to wrap it up, unfortunately. We got to go to my son's soccer game. 9:30. But we will talk about what the next topic will be. Can you do dual PJ with the Optima?
Adam, get out of here.
Double stack the Optimas. Can you imagine sending that out to like Optima marketing and be like, look what I did, and you're double stacking Optimas and the light that comes out from behind the lens housing is shooting into each other's. Oh I don't. Whatever. Oh, that would be good. I still remember that thing on the comparison. What a good laugh.
Oh yeah.
What a good laugh. But we'll talk about next week's topic. Anything else, Jonathan?
No.
No.
Thanks for hanging out with us tonight, guys.
Yep. Thanks for joining us. This will be the new time, new day, Friday, 7 p.m. Central. Until next time, guys, stay safe out there, and we'll see you guys later. Have a good one.